Hi from IK Multimedia, here to present you the Uno Synth PRO X. The Uno Synth PRO X is a paraphonic synthesizer with 3 oscillators, a dual filter design, 3 envelopes, 2 LFOs, an advanced step sequencer, and so on. So starting from the beginning, the heart of the synthesizer are the 3 analog oscillators with variable wave shape. 2 of the oscillators, oscillator 2 and 3, can be synced to oscillator 1. Or can be frequency modulated from oscillator 1. On top of that, we have a noise generator and a ring modulator on oscillator 2. The 3 oscillators can also be controlled all together, which is very useful when preparing paraphonic patches. So you simply hold the oscillator selector button, and then modifying any of the parameters of the oscillators, you will modify all 3 oscillators together. The oscillators are then routed to the filter. Filter 1 is an OTA filter, while the filter 2 is an SSI chip-based filter. So filter 1 is a multi-mode 2-pole filter capable of low pass and high pass. While filter 2 is an SSI chip-based filter, capable of only low pass, but switchable between 2-pole and 4-pole. The 2 filters can be routed either in series or in parallel. When in parallel, filter 1 can switch its phase to create different kind of vowel sound. So given the different topology of filters, we can create quite different sounds from a usual synthesizer. For example, if we put filter 1 into high pass and we keep filter number 2 on low pass, of course, but we link the cutoff of the 2, we can create band pass filter. And using cutoff 1, we're gonna move the filter. While using cutoff 2, we're gonna change the bandwidth of this just created filter. It is possible also to link the resonances of the 2 filters by simply using Shift and pressing link. Now, putting all those things together, we're gonna already have a very rich and quite complex sound. So now we can start modulating those sounds and all those, the sources, the filters and everything. And the first modulator that you can encounter is are the envelopes. Envelopes are 3 on the Uno Synth PRO X. There's the filter envelope, the amp envelope, and envelope number 3. Filter and amp, as the name suggests, are already linked through either the filter or the amp, and from the panel are quite easily accessible, especially the filter one, even though we can hear it. So I'm gonna close filter number 2 and modify it. While the amp envelope is on the second page, just pressing the envelope button. You can hear the attack coming later, or removing the sustain and play with the decay, or get the longest release ever. Now the envelope have a couple of addendum which are quite useful and can be pretty useful when performing, for example. So one of the things is the looping envelope, which by pressing and holding the shift button and moving the attack, you can turn on. And as soon as you turn it on, the envelope will loop between attack and decay. Which can help you create different LFOs, given that we didn't really arrive at the LFOs is the next step. But anyway, there's also another nice addendum, which is the retrigger option that can be switched on and off. So you can decide either to retrig the envelope when a key is pressed or not. That is very useful during when you're creating paraphonic patches. So let's go into one. Given that I only have one voice and it's not polyphonic, each time I press a key, the retrigger will retrigger the filter envelope. But switching it off by holding shift and the decay knob, I can have a more polyphonic type of sound, which is really helpful for mimicking a little bit better a polyphonic behavior. The other most common modulator that you can find is the LFO, and the Uno Synth PRO X has 2 LFOs, which have 8 different waveform, rate that goes from 0.01 Hz to 100 Hz, and some other nice addendum. Let's take a look. And if I can turn up the rate, here you can yeah, you have it. So the LFOs have 8 different waveforms. So from the sine wave to a triangular wave, a ramp down, a ramp up, which is one of my favorite, a square one, a random, the sample and hold, which is very useful when creating drones, and a noise. Noise, of course, doesn't have rate. So those were the basics of the modulation, but thanks to the modulation matrix that we have in the Uno Synth PRO X, we can go way more deeper in creating way more complex type of modulations, selecting different sources and different destinations. The modulation matrix is built with 16 different slots, and let's try to create something a little bit different. So going again into the selection of the slot with the two buttons, we can select one of the 16 different slots. So for example, I'm gonna go and select again the LFOs, but this time I'm gonna select the pitch as a destination. So I can create a type of vibrato. Or an extreme one. Okay, that wasn't a really nice sound, but let's go back to a quite more hearable amount. So on the slot, by the way, another shortcut that you can have is by holding the modulation slot that you want and using the data knob, you can adjust directly the amount without going through the amount. So for example now, another thing might be using the envelope number 3 to modulate the tuning of one of the oscillators. Let's go for the oscillator number 2. So selecting another slot, slot number 2, and going from holding the source button and selecting the envelope number 3, and holding the destination button and selecting the tune of the oscillator 2. Using the amount knob here, we can already hear something more, a bit more interesting happening. And that's even better if I switch on the sync. Or the sync and the FM. So now on the topic of creating sounds, to me what in electronic music is very important are the effects. And the Synth PRO X is equipped with 3 slots of effects. On slot number 1, the modulations, we have a chorus, with 3 different flavors, synth 1, synth 2, and strings. The vibes are kind of an emulation of on an old Univibe, and we can have either the vibrato or the chorus. So on the vibrato, hear the sound, or the chorus. There's 5 different delays, starting from the mono to the ping pong, the doubler, etc. But let's see it. So on an Arpeggiator, let's put it this way. There's a filter, a low pass filter, can be really useful. The feedback control. And the time, of course, which now is synced. Now it is selected on, it was selected on stereo. We can have it in mono for example, bass lines, or again, stereo. We can have a doubler. The left, center, right, which is very fun, and and the ping pong relay. By default, the time is synced, as you've seen, but if I press the data knob and go inside the edit preset menu, I can actually switch off the sync and go in milliseconds. Very small delays. The third slot is the reverb one, and we have 3 different reverbs, the control for the time, the size, and the low pass filter. We can have a hold reverb or a plate reverb. And the new shimmer reverb. Now, if I add this reverb to the possibility of adjusting the VCA amount for creating drones, there you have it, instant ambient. So now we've seen how we create a sound out of the Uno Synth PRO X, but how can you play it? You've seen me using the onboard keyboard, which is quite handy, especially for me, which I'm not a keyboard player. But there are several methods on top of course, connecting with the MIDI into the MIDI connectors, an external keyboard, and just play. There's an onboard arpeggiator with 10 modes, and an onboard advanced sequencer. Starting from the arpeggiator, just pressing the up button and pressing a key, we start the arpeggiator, and with the hold button it will latch the arpeggiator. On top of that, there's this pattern creation possibility on the arpeggiator, which is quite simple. By simply pressing on the step, you can activate or disengage the steps. So I can create different, different rhythm patterns for my arpeggio. Don't only have that simple one. On top of that, we have 10 different modes and up to 3 octaves of range. The modes are easily selectable using the shift function. If I go right below the step buttons, pressing the shift button and using the step buttons, I can select between up, down, up and down plus, which repeats the first and the last note of the arpeggio. Down and up, so exactly the opposite. Same for the down and up plus. Random, so it's gonna play randomly the all the notes that you're playing. Play, which is gonna play the arpeggio exactly as you put down your notes. X2 up and X2 down, which are gonna repeat 2 times each of the notes going up or going down. And the range of the arpeggiator is between 1 octave, as we just heard, or 3 octaves. So for example, let's go for the up and down, which is one of my favorite. Yes, and you understood why it's my favorite. And we can change the octaves. Or even 3 octaves. Now, if you want, you like very much the arpeggio that you've created, you would love to import it into the sequencer, that's easy done by just creating the arpeggio. Like that. I'm gonna press record and play. And voila! Now we are in the sequencer already, and we've recorded the arpeggio that we just done. So let's just try to create and work with the sequencer. Now the sequencer is composed by up to 64 steps, which can be selected with the shift. So either press the first page of the sequencer, and I can just select it with the data knob. Up to 16, or I can select directly pages. So if I press the second page, I'll get 32 steps, the third page I get 48, and on the fourth step finally 64 steps. But of course I can, with the data knob, I can create odd figures. I don't know, like 7 steps, which is pretty handy for creating polyrhythm stuff. So going back into the 16th, which is easier, we have a couple of nice what I call accidents, or nice way to evolve or anyway create more interesting type of sequences. First of all, we have the accent button. So as soon as you press the accent button, it will show you the trigger, and putting the accented trigger will give you this accented sound on the where the trigger goes. To modify the accent, we can simply press shift and use the release knob here, and now you can hear it way better. And we can modify even the accent decay to create some differences. Then we have the tie, which tie the notes together to create legato type of patterns. So let's try to put some, and you can already hear it. I'm gonna go up with the glide amount. And then there's something that we kind of put there for creating a type of ghost notes, which is the gate, that was quite similar to the I would say quite the opposite of the accent. So it decreases the velocity of the trigger and shorten up the notes. Now if I remove it, and now we shift and tie, I can adjust a little bit the swing. now you heard that this bass line is quite similar to something that, you know, a sound that we already know. And that sounds might be generally described as acid. And that's where the bassline mode of the Uno Synth PRO X came handy. Because at this point, if I press it, I'm gonna change completely the sound and some of the behaviors of some components. So I'm gonna create interaction between the filters, the envelopes, etc., in order to create the behavior of the old bass line, but not the sound, because of course we are having 3 different oscillators, 2 filters, etc. But we're gonna go into that sweet spot of and playing with that. I can always modify a sequence as soon as I have the record button on, and by simply holding one of the steps, I can either modify what's on the step or insert something else. So for example, I'm gonna go and insert, higher notes. Just gonna go, like that. Or even lower notes. So on the first one, I'm gonna go even lower. I'm gonna put another. Where do I have the tie here? So I'm gonna put one here. Now, as you hear, we do have kind of the behavior and the flavor of that old bass line, but given that we are now on the Uno Synth PRO X and in a more modern synthesizer, we still have the possibility to add the other 3 oscillators, the other 2 oscillators. Of course, use the effects. And finally use a little bit the drive. And even go further and use parallel filters on a bass line. Now, to play a sequence, we can also transpose it like the old machines, if you are one of those tallest musicians, by pressing Shift and up and the octave up on the interface. You go into the transpose mode. So as soon as I press play and I move into the keyboard, I'm gonna transpose the entire sequence. now we played the sequencer in a, I would say, normal way with notes, the sound, but we can use the sequencer in way more deeper and create more complex modulations. We can also call it modulations. So I'm gonna empty the preset. I'm just gonna put a note here on the first step. As you've seen, I'm gonna repeat it now. If the record button is on and I hold the step, I can insert whatever I want. So in this case, a note, and you can hear it. You can see it on the in the display, and I can change the length of it, and have it, all the 16 steps. So if I play, I will have the note going into the 16 steps. But as I said, as soon as the record button is lit, holding any of the step, let me insert whatever I want. That means also parameters. So for example, in this particular scenario, if I start holding and moving the cutoff frequency of the filter too, I can start, modulating the note that I just insert. And I continue like that. I can continue like that with even the other filter if I want, for example, like that. But we also, the level of the oscillators maybe, and the pitch. So I'm gonna insert 2 here, and then I'm gonna insert another pitch of still the oscillator number 2, another waveform. I'm gonna put something here, the third oscillators maybe, like that. But even the amount of the modulation, so I'm gonna put, the reverb opening here and here. I don't know how it's gonna sound. But on top of that, I can even record in real time on the sequencer. So as soon as I press the record and the play button all together, I can record lines of automations into the sequencer. So in terms of complex sequences, I'm searching for a preset that should help me, should help understand what I mean. I can actually create in a certain way. Yeah, let's go for this one. So create very complex, percussion type of sounds because of the in-depth modulation parameter recording that we can have. And there's even more inside the Synth PRO X, and I suggest you to just find it out while playing and having fun with it. But there's a couple of tools that I would like to show you, like for example the preset edit menu, where all the parts of the synthesizer are available and can be tweaked already from there, and where you can rename a preset or initialize a preset if you want to delete it completely from your machine. And you can always restore it. I'm gonna tell you how later on. And there's the usual setup menu, which will be super helpful for you in setting up your Synth PRO X inside your studio. So inside the setup menu, you have your usual suspects. So the MIDI channels, the sync options, but also some other additional features that are inside the Synth PRO X. For example, how to recall a preset. Now, there's a fast recall option, which is done by holding the shift and pressing the preset button, and will recall the preset as it was saved. But now, by default, doing so, it will ask you to lower either the sound and the sequence, or either the sound or only the sequence, which is very helpful during performances and stuff like that. But it's gonna ask you to what you want to do. And inside the setup, for example, you can tell him to recall it directly. So in a live performance, if you tweak the sounds in ways that you're not capable of going back, if the recall is indirect, pressing shift and preset will instantly recall it as it was saved, which is, again, for drops and stuff like that, is very useful. On top of that, there's a master tuning, so you can tune the entire synthesizer. There's a keyboard menu which will help you getting the onboard keyboard nicer for you. So for example, you can decide either the velocity or the scale of the keyboard. So as soon as I select something rather than the chromatic scale, all the white keys will be useful for playing on that scale. And there's a transpose option, so you can transpose it up to one plus minus an octave, the entire scale. On top of that, there's all the pitch wheel and some other behaviors like the metronome, the backlight, and also a calibration process for the oscillators, which is something that happens usually when you start up the unit. But if you feel like you want to calibrate it again for making it even more in tune, you can go there. And some other nice addendum that you can find in the manual if you feel like you need it. Also, the connection on the Uno Synth PRO X are quite advanced. We go from the usual MIDI in, we have balanced outputs, headphones out, an audio input that can go through the filter or as an audio daisy chain, CV and gate connection that can be used to connect to Eurorack, a USB-C that can be used both for power and data, and the power supply. Regarding the USB-C, given that it transmits MIDI, it can be connected directly to the editor that you've seen during the entire length of this video. Editor that is very useful for getting a look of what is happening to the synth, from the main panel to the matrix and the effects, but also to use it as a librarian for all your presets, so you can save, store and exchange preset between your computer and the machine, and also share it with whoever you want and whoever has a Uno Synth PRO X. There is even more on the Uno Synth PRO X, and I suggest you to dig deeper, discover it while playing, having fun with it, and create your own sounds. Thank you.